All right, so today we're going to dive into bones and how to start an IK, Inverse Kinematics rig, as they call it. This is going to be the first in probably 2 demos, maybe 3, but probably 2, on how to do it. Today we're going to talk about setting up the bones and how to get the bones to work with your character. And what's going to be a big part of that actually is getting the bones to be set up in a way so that when you make the character a parent or child of the bones, it actually will automatically calculate what they call the weights, which is the influence of the bones and how much of the mesh they influence, and so on and so forth. What we're going to create today is actually not going to be an inverse kinematic rig yet. It will be a forward kinematic, and what that means is that it won't work quite like it did in Flash yet, but we'll set it up so that it'll be inverse kinematics in a second. You'll see what I mean. So for this, and since you guys are doing toys and stuff like that, I decided not to do just a regular character. I made a spoon with arms, kind of like David's character a little bit. And so I've set that up. Now, one of the first things that's really big is I actually set him up in the wrong orientation. And I did that on purpose because I want you guys to see it. What is really the best and what needs to really happen, there's a couple things before you even start putting the bones in. First thing is you want your character oriented side to side along the x-axis here. And then the second thing is you need him to be in the center. Now, if I go over and I take a look, what's really important, I'm going to get rid of my 2 side views here. Boom, boom, because that's just causing problems. Okay, when I had a bigger monitor, I had the space, but not now. So if I go over to my object properties here, the object, and I can look at my rotation, if that is 0, 0, 0, then what I need to do is I need to rotate him inside the object using in edit mode. If, however, one of these says, if the z-axis says 90, okay, then what I need to do is I need to set it to 0. And it may or may not make a difference, to be completely honest with you, but it's just better to make sure everything is, perfect. Because once you start getting into this process, after you're done, it can get pretty complicated, and the mistakes and stuff like that get really hard to fix. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go, I'm going to tab into edit mode really quickly with this guy, and then I'm going to go to my modifiers, and I'm going to turn off my my mirror modifier and turn off clipping, and then I'm just going to go here and I'm going to hit the 7 key on the numpad so that I'm looking straight down and make sure that I don't have perspective on. So I'm going to hit the 5 key to make sure that there's no perspective. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the A key so that I've selected everything. So I had to hit it twice because there was one of the things where it was selected. And I'm going to then take my rotate here, and I'm going to rotate him 90 degrees. And the way I'm going to make it 90 degrees for sure is I'm going to start rotating, and after I start rotating, you can see down in the bottom left-hand corner, it's telling me I'm at 36.04 degrees. I'm going to hold the control key down, and that snaps me to 5-degree increments. So now I'm right at 90, and I can see that in the bottom left. And then the next thing I need to do, obviously, is I need to realign it. So then I'm going to just slide it in the X and the Y axis here, or along the X and the Y axis, until I get right back into my center point. And you want that center point to be right in the middle too. So one of the things that you need to do as well is tab out to your object view and take a look at your cube here and make sure that your location is set to X and Y are set to 0. That's really important to do when you're starting this process, because we are going to, it's especially if you've got arms and legs or anything like that, this has to be symmetrical, okay? And that's kind of that's the difficult part of building a bone rig, is that it has to be symmetrical. If one of the sides is a little different, your character could end up walking like the Hunchback of Notre Dame or something like that, which you may or may not want, but you can add that imperfection if you want to, but usually you don't. Usually you want it to be completely symmetrical. Yeah, exactly. You could, all sorts of mess ups. So what I'll do is, now that I'm about ready to move it into the center, I'm going to go back to my modifier and I'm going to turn my mirroring on, but this time in the x-axis, and I turn clipping back on, and I'm going to zoom in here really close so that I can see what's going on. And then what I'll do is, after you start to move it, if you hold the shift key down, it'll slow down the motions. And I'm just going to look for that moment. See that moment where the two sides connect? And there we go. Because I don't want to do this. Because that'll really mess up my object, and obviously he doesn't look so good. Right? Yeah, he's skinny. Well, that's too skinny. So we're going to undo that, and there, and now I should be perfect. Now my object is back together. So now what I'm going to do is, one of the important things to do, I mean, you don't have to, but it's good to oftentimes apply the mirror. So I'm going to apply my mirror modifier. Now, before I do that, I'm going to hit save. So I'm going to save there like that. And then I'm going to hit the apply. And you have to, when you're applying a modifier, you have to hit the apply when you're in object mode. If you're in edit mode and you hit the apply, it will give you an error. It says modifiers cannot be applied in edit mode. Okay, thank you. You need to be in object mode. Okay, so let's get out of here, tab out, and object mode, and apply. And now I'm going to do something very, very, very important. I'm going to go File, Save As, okay, and I've got my IK tester is the name of this. I'm going to add an underscore, and I'm going to say mirror applied to it, so that I know that that's what this is. And if you want to, might even want to say underscore v2 for version 2 or just 2, so that it's in line with everything else. So there we go, save it. Now we're moving on. Now we're in a new file. What that'll do is that'll keep your original character untouched, okay? So that you don't, if this process gets really mucked up and you mess up your character, you don't have to redo him. You can just always go back to the previous file. So that's really important to save it once with the mirror modifier unapplied, okay, with it still in the list there. And then once you apply it, to save a second file called version 2, and then I always add the annotation for myself, says mirror applied, so that I know that that's what I did for version 2, and that's the difference between version 1 and version 2. If you want to, you can say mirror modifier or with mirror modifier on version 1, whatever, doesn't matter. Okay, so now we're good to go here. So now what we're going to do is I've got my spoon guy, and he is exactly in the center. Now, one of the things that a lot of people recommend when you're doing something like this is also setting your Z location to 0 as well, which is going to throw him down here on the ground. And so what we're going to do is we're going to tab back in, make sure I've selected everything with the A key. I'm going to bring him up. Let's get rid of perspective here and just go, I hit the 1 key, and I'm just going to make sure that I put him right down on the bottom or close enough to it there, okay, so that the center of the object is down here at the base, okay, and that's going to help things out a lot. So I'm going to tab out there, and now we're good to go. Now the last thing I'm going to do as I'm about to start this process is I'm going to do a keystroke here, and that's Shift-C. Shift-C centers everything, okay, so hence the C part. It takes your little crosshairs doodad, which can be anywhere basically, and it puts it right back down in the center of the grid. It also resets your scrolling. So some of you may have noticed your scrolling gets a little wacky, like one little click of the mouse button and it jumps forward, or you're like scrolling like crazy and it's not moving anywhere. I'm not quite sure how that happens or why that happens, but if you hit Shift-C, it just recenters everything. So now my cursor is down here, and we're ready to go. So I can go to the Add menu, and I'm going to go to the Armature menu, and I'm going to add a single bone. Boom. Now, can't see it, can we? So right now, I can't see the bone, and the reason for that is because it created the bone, and it's now inside this guy. So if I hit Z, we'll see him, the bone is just kind of sitting down there, okay? So one of the ways that you can work with this so that you can see the bone at all times is make sure you're selected on the armature, which you can just double check that up here in our outliner. And then you're going to go and you're going to see that you've got a couple new buttons up here in the properties tray. Just click on the little dude, and then down here you can see under display you can hit Xray. Now watch over here while I click Xray. Basically, Xray mode means that no matter what happens, you will always have a bone, or the bone's showing. So that if it's inside your character, that's fine. You're always going to see that object, which is cool. I mean, that helps us a lot. And don't need to worry about too much else. But I mean, there's a lot of display options, and you can also hit, I think, wire. I don't remember. Anyway, so that works out really nicely. Xray, done. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tab into the bone so that I'm in edit mode. And as soon as you get into edit mode, you'll notice that you can click on 3 things in the bone. This is the tail, then you can click on the whole bone, and then you can click on the head. Where you place this first bone is actually really important. If you're doing something with legs and arms, it should be at about the hip range, okay, or the waist, so that when your character bends over, that's really the core of the body. And so when people who do this stuff all the time for 3D animation, that's pretty much what they say to do, is you put your first bone at the waist. Now obviously I've got a spoon here, okay? It doesn't really have a waist. And yet at the same time, because we're animating and giving human characteristics to an inanimate object, he kind of does. So I want to be smart about where I put it. So I'm going to grab the whole thing. I'm going to just grab the whole thing, actually tab out back into object mode, hit the 1 key on the number pad so that I can kind of see this, back off a little bit, and I'm going to say that I want the waist to be somewhere in this area. So I'm just going to slide this up until it looks about right, and it's pretty arbitrary. I mean, I'm kind of making it up. But that looks about right. So then what I can do is tab back in. So now that I'm in edit mode, and then I can click on the tail. Oh, and one thing I quickly forgot. Also make sure, because you hit Shift-C, this should be a no-brainer. Do you want to make sure your X and your Y's for the bone object are also 0, because that means it's directly in the center. That's going to help a lot. Okay, so I'll go back into edit mode, click on the tail, and now the process of creating more bones is actually very similar to how we build our characters, and that is extruding. So we actually hit the E key to create a new bone. But you have to be clicked on the tail. So I'm going to hit the E key, okay, and you can by the way, hit E and then Z. And then as you move your mouse, it will only work in the Z axis. So it's kind of cool. E, Z. Okay? And now even if I go side to side, you can't mess it up. Okay? Now one of the things that's a big problem, let me undo that. Okay? If I extrude and I start moving it like this, notice how the bone gets twisted, it rotates. That can cause a lot of problems with the bone. And the reason for that is because the bone will control the mesh, the outside outline of our mesh of our object, and if it's twisted, it'll actually twist the mesh too, which is great for like the head and the neck, okay, because you can have them rotate the head or whatever like that, but it's bad if the bone starts out twisted because it can kind of mess you up. So we're going to undo that. So the other way that you can do this, I can just sit here and hit extrude, and then I can just start making a whole bunch of bones, which is actually how I used to do it, okay? But then I learned something new in the last couple days. So you can click on the bone, click on the tail of the bone here. Oops, there's another one there. Let's delete that bone. Okay, so now I'm on the tail. And you can just make it really big. Whoa, something's wrong there. There's still another bone there. Okay, so now, wow, how many, I have no idea what's going on now. Yeah, sometimes it's just best to start over. Let's try that. There we go. Now it's working. I had to click on the whole bone. I was just clicking on the tail of the bone that was hidden. And so when you hit delete bones, apparently it wasn't deleting it all. So anyway, I could take the original bone and I could just make it really big here. So if I just take it and go all the way to the top of the head, okay, just like that. And then I want to think about how many bones I'm going to need in the middle of this, okay. So I can just hit, I can go to wireframe mode. It might also help us tab out. I'm going to take the subsurf modifier and turn that off so that I can kind of see a little bit better here. So tab, let's go tab back into here, back into edit mode on my bone. So now I can kind of take a look at what I need. I'm going to need 1 bone for the head, 2 for the neck, 3 for the shoulders kinda, and then 4 for the rib cage, 5 total to get down to where, or really 6 total, because I want end of rib cage, then stomach, and then pelvis. So like 6 total. So what I can do is I can right click on the whole bone, let's go back to 1, and then I can go over and subdivide it under the modeling. You can also hit the W key, okay, and it says specials, subdivide, and then it just cuts it in 1. But then I can go over here and I can add the number of cuts. So if I wanted 6 pieces, I need 5 cuts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. See? And what's really neat is now I can start to adjust them. So I'm just going to go back and click on the tails and just slide them down to create, okay? So there's like my stomach area, there's the pelvis area, this is the chest, and the chest doesn't really bend much, okay? The rib cage, from the rib cage up, doesn't really bend much. What bends is your shoulders. You think about it, if you try to bend forward, your back is pretty straight from the shoulders down. When you bend forward, what's really curving is your stomach, and then your shoulders are coming forward. So we'll deal with shoulders later. So then I'm going to bring this up, and then here I've got this part here for the neck, and then this part here for the bottom of the neck, or the top of the neck. So we've got like shoulders, neck, and then the head is obviously a much larger one. Now it's also important to look at this from the side, so I'm going to hit the 3 key and just kind of take a look, and everything looks straight in line, except, oh, look at that, so the head needs to be tilted back a little bit. You know, there's some important things that you kind of want to make sure that they're in line in all directions too. So now we're going to do the arms. So let's go back to hit the 1 on the number pad. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put my cursor, I'm going to left click just to put it right where I think I want the shoulders to start, which is actually kind of up here. You can move this around. And then I'm going to do something that's kind of neat that you can do, and that is I'm going to hit Shift A for add. Now normally if I wasn't in edit mode, it would then give me a whole bunch of options. You know, would you want to add a path, a cube, a sphere, what? But because I'm in edit mode, the only thing it will be able to add right now is another bone. And you can actually have bones that aren't connected, and we're gonna make sure that they do end up being connected together in a little bit. But it's kind of cool. You can have the bones like disjointed a little bit, you know, just to put it that way. They're not really disjointed, but it doesn't have to work exactly like the anatomy of a person or an animal. So I'm going to hit Shift A, and it's going to add that bone right there. See, just like that. And then I'm just going to bring this down, and I'm going to kind of line it up with my with the shoulder. Now one of the things that actually I might want to do here is instead of doing that whole thing of just moving it around, okay, what you can also do, let me undo that, so I hit Shift A, okay, is I want to make the other side as well and have it be exactly in the same place. So what I might want to do, so let's undo this, is go Shift C again. So now it's going to be down there, and I'm going to hit Shift A, and then I'm going to hit A to get rid of it, and then I'm going to hit Shift A again. So now I've got 2 of these guys over here that are right on top of each other. And what I want to do is I want to get them to be exactly the same place. So I'm going to hold the control key while I start to move this in the x-axis, and it's going to snap. And it's going to tell me down in the bottom left-hand corner how far away I am. So it says D for delta 0.50. So I moved it 0.50 over. That looks good for now. Then this one, I go doot, 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 doot. Now I'm negative 0.5 over. Now I can shift and click on these, and let's bring them both up. Okay. We'll bring that about there. And now what I can do, and this is kind of neat, if I shift click on both of the heads of the bone, I can hit S and then X, SX. And now I'm scaling them, which is kind of weird that I'm scaling them, but I'm really not making them bigger. I'm scaling the differences between the two. So if I just bring these in a little bit, that'll work really easily. Then I hold Shift key and do both of these and drag them to about the same location. And what I'm really looking for is where that joint is going to be, so I need to bring them out. So I'm going to hit SX again, and I can just bring them out. And what's really cool is now I've got this symmetry that I built in because I was smart in the way that I added both the shoulder bones. Now, the next step, how do you add all the arm bones, right, and keep them symmetrical? Well, pretty easy, actually. I'm going to right-click on this. I'm going to hit Extrude, okay? And I'm going to hit E, and I'm going to say X, and I'm just going to bring it out. And see my delta down there on the bottom left-hand corner, unfortunately enough, isn't, I didn't leave myself enough room. So let's do this again. So I'm going to bring this over here. So there we go. And I'm going to go E, X. And as I start to bring it out, I'm going to hold the control key down. And now it's going to, again, snap. And there we go. I'm 5.2 out. So now I can do the exact same thing over here. EX. Hold the control key down. And now I'm negative 5.2 there. So now I've got two extruded bones that are exactly the same size and exactly the same location. Lastly, I'm going to subdivide them. So I can hit the W key or I can hit subdivide. And I really only need one cut because I want the elbow there. Okay? And right click on this one, W, one cut, done. And then what I can do is I'm going to move, and again you'll see the delta change over here in the bottom left hand corner. I want to move it so that it's right over that, that elbow. So about 0.3. So I went back 0.3. So over here, I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to start moving this, and there, 0.3. So now the bones are about the same. So lastly, what we need to do is we need to give him leg bones. Now, if your guy has two legs, you would want to do hips just like you do the shoulders. Okay? But here we've only got one, so it's not a big deal. Now, as I'm doing this, let me also just talk real quickly here. If some of you might be saying, well, it's fine, but my character is a car or an airplane or something like that. Do I really need to do this? And the answer is yes. Because if you take a look, I mean, watch Cars or watch the preview for the new movie they're coming out with, Planes. Yeah, look at them. The bodies of the cars bend. The wheels became the arms. You see what I mean? Like, and the wheels moved a little bit. That was basically an inverse kinematics system. I don't know how they did it technically, but that's really what it was. So now, anyway, what I'm going to do here is the same thing. Now, this was our base bone, so I'm just going to hit Shift A, and it's going to add another bone here, and I'm going to bring him up, and then I'm going to grab the tail. I'm going to actually flip it upside down, okay? And I'm going to bring that right up to there. So we've got these two. Now, they're not connected, okay? But they are at the same time. Then I'm just going to make this guy really big, okay? And obviously, I want to subdivide him because I want a bunch more. And I'm thinking, 2, 3, 4. 4 cuts will probably work for this so that he's flexible along his legs. We're going to make him more like Gumby. I'm not going to make him have like legs with a knee joint. Okay, we're going to make him bend smoothly throughout. If you wanted to make him have a knee joint, you would really only need 2 bones, right? One for the thigh and one for the shin. So again, kind of think about the motion that you might want. Okay, so now we just got to do a couple of quick things here, and then believe it or not, we're about ready to go. One of our major issues is we have to parent, okay, our shoulder bones and then the leg bone here to the bones that we want them to parent to. And that's a little strategic, but so what I can do is I can click on the head of the bone here, and I'm going to parent it to the tail of the chest bone. So I'm going to hold my shift key down, okay? Always select the parent last, just like I taught you guys the other day, and I'm going to hit Control P, make parent, connect. And I don't see the lines. Already says they're connected. Do I have to? Oh, okay, there it is. So I click on the whole bone. So I click on the whole bone, then I click to the tail, and I hit Control P, and then what you want to do is you want to select Keep Offset. You see that? And what that'll do is that won't, if you click Connected, it's going to bring the bone up into here. We don't want to do that. So Control P, Keep Offset, and it's still not doing it. Maybe it's bone. There it is. Okay, so you go straight from one bone to the next bone. So you just got to click on the bone. I thought you went from the head to the tail of the bone. Okay, so now I've got that offset, and you can see there's the little dotted lines. That's why I knew that it wasn't working, is because there weren't any dotted lines. So I'm going to go back down here, and I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to make this bone a child of this bone. Okay, Control P, Keep Offset. There should be a dotted line there. I just can't see it. Yep. And then I'm going to bring the head of that bone back up and in there so we don't have a gap in the bend. Now, we've got one last problem, and that is here in the body of my spoon, I've got a lot of bones, but I don't think this is going to work. And the reason being I don't have any cuts here. We can try it, but I'm pretty sure it's not going to work. So what I'm going to do right now is we'll do a little experiment. I'm just going to hit Save, okay? And then actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to then go File, Save As again, and I'm going to go version 3, and I'm going to say bones, okay? Save As. So now I've got a third version. So I have my second version with the mirror applied. Third version, I've got my bones started. Now, I'm going to try to set this inverse kinematic the way it should be. So here's what you want to do. You're going to tab out of edit mode on the bones. You're going to right click on your character. You're going to add another constraint. You're going to add the armature constraint. You choose the armature that you've built, okay, and that starts the whole process. But it's not quite done yet. And if I were to do this, now I can go in. If I go down here to the menu, you'll notice a new menu now happens to show up called Pose Mode. And if I do this, I can grab one of these and hit the Rotate key, and it will start to bend stuff, okay? It's kind of cool. But it's not perfect. What we need to do next, let's get out of Pose Mode here, okay, is we need to make the object, our character, a child of the armature, so that wherever the armature goes, the object goes as well. So I'm going to right-click on the character, hold the Shift key down, then right-click on the armature. That can be a little difficult sometimes because the armature is inside the character, but be patient, you'll get it. And then I'm going to hit Control P one more time. Now, stop here and take a look. You have some options. Armature. And what you want to do, 99% of the time, is set automatic weights. Now, I didn't do the loop cuts and slides that I think I'm going to need to do for the leg and the body, so this may or may not work, but we'll see. So we're going to try it. So hit Control P, and now if you go to the outliner, you'll notice here, just like I taught you, that if you open it up, there's your object, there's my cube, okay? And let's see now if this works. So I'm going to go to Pose Mode, and what's really important actually is let's see if the leg works here. So I'm going to rotate that. Yeah, see, that didn't work very well, did it? Okay. So you see how what's happening here is when I try and rotate the bone, the entire body slides sideways. It's messed up because that part of the body has absolutely no places for it to bend because it's got no vertices. It's got one big long face on each side. So what we're going to do then is, let me just kill this, and I'm just going to go back to my file and grab it back here. So we're in weight paint mode. That's interesting. So we're going to go back to object mode, and if you take a look here, you'll see I've got the bones and the armature are separate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to, or the armature and the character are separate. I'm going to go back to my character, and I'm going to hit Tab and get into edit mode. And hey. Oh, I've got two. Okay, yeah, that gets confusing. Okay, there we go. Now we're back to where we were. So now I've got this going, and what I need to do is just get out of edit mode in the bones, right-click on my character, tab into edit mode, hit the 1 key in the number pad so I'm looking straight at them, make sure there's no perspective, okay? And then what I want to do is I'm just going to loop cut and slide. So I'm going to make these loop cuts match, okay, the bones. So loop cut. So there it is, click, slide it up, match it. Loop cut again, slide it up, match it. Loop cut again, slide it up and match it. Loop cut, you get the idea, right? What this is going to do is this is going to give us the segments that our model needs to bend. And it's going to assign those segments to the bones when we add our armature. So I'm going to just double check here really quickly and take a look at our bones and make sure that, you know, that the sections are pretty close. So if I look here at the elbow, I might, you know, that's pretty close to the joint. I think it'll work. I might want to move some things. I might want to move this up a little bit. So I'll option click on that, bring that up a little bit. The neck looks good, the head looks good. So that looks pretty good. But you might need to play with this a little bit, which I think is another reason why I think it's really good for you to save multiple versions of your file. Make sure you name them correctly so that you know which version is which, but now you'll be able to do it. So let's go through the process again. So right click, let's add our modifier. So we're going to add our armature modifier. We're going to point it at the armature, and we're going to right click on both, Control P, and then with automatic weights. Boom. Okay? And now I can right click on my armature only, go to pose mode, and now let's see how the foot works. Ah, that works a lot better. Okay? Now it's not perfect. Okay? We're going to start talking about why it's not perfect and stuff, but you can see how, because I allowed those vertices to work within, or to match up with the others, how this is kind of starting to work. And we're going to fine tune it a lot, but you can kind of see how things will start to bend, and you can create, okay, some pretty good motions with an armature that's properly built. The other thing that I might do with my bones is go over here, and you can change the way that they are set up. And once you've got it kind of set up, these, what they call octahedrons, they're kind of annoying to me. I like going to B-bone, okay, and it kind of creates a little rectangular bone that's in there that I think is a lot easier to deal with. You can still see them in edit mode. You can still see what the tail and the head is, and you can still rotate them. I just think it's a lot easier to deal with when you start playing with that sort of stuff. I like those a lot better. So it obviously has some problems. We'll have to do some modifications. We're going to deal with that in a different demo. But at the same time, you can start to see now how things work. Now, it's not set up yet like Flash, where we had the inverse kinematics, where you could grab the hand and just move the hand and the elbow would come out and stuff like that. We're not there yet. but we will get there. So I have to rotate each one individually. So if I wanted to bring the hand up here, I can't just grab the hand and move it. I have to like literally rotate each individual body part to kind of get it to work. And then obviously we've got some what we call deformation problem, a deformation problem where the elbows aren't right and all that sort of stuff. So we can play with a lot of that, but at the same time it looks good. Now once you've got it set up kind of basic like this, I'm going to go File, Save As yet again, and I'm going to call this version 4, and I'm going to say IK modifier applied. Oh, actually, it's not the IK modifier, it's the armature. Arm modifier applied. So now I know that it's not IK'd yet, it's not inverse kinematics, this is actually what they call forward kinematics, but I've got the bones, and the bones are now influencing my character. Does this make sense to everybody so far? I know it's complicated, and I know that there's a lot in here, but I'll write out a procedure for you so you can just follow it step by step.